Question number 6, Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Building and Housing. Is the reason he does not support banning non-resident foreign buyers from purchasing existing homes that he agrees with the Prime Minister that the Australian government's housing policy has been spectacularly unsuccessful?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
The reason the government does not support bans on foreign buyers is they're shown not to work. As the Prime Minister said, the policy has been spectacularly unsuccessful in Australia. House prices in Australia's major cities are even higher than Auckland and have been rising rapidly. The average price of a house in Sydney is currently $930,000 as compared to Auckland's $741,000. Prices in Sydney have gone up by 9% in the last quarter. Home ownership rates in every state and city of Australia have declined over the last census. I also note that those that are advocating banning non-resident foreign buyers propose exempting Australians and instead focusing on those with Chinese-sounding names. This sort of inconsistent policy is more about racial politics than helping homeowners.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Does he stand by his own statement in the House last week that, and I quote, "The Australian policy has not worked because the price of homes in Australia have gone up by more and are less affordable than what they are in New Zealand," unquote? And if so, how much faster have Australian prices increased in the last year than New Zealand prices?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
The specific information I do have is that house prices in Sydney over the last quarter have gone up by 9%. Current price of an average home in Sydney is $930,000. That's about 20% higher than the price in Auckland. I also note that in every city in Australia and in every state, home ownership has declined over the last census, and so I would not suggest that Australia has the answer to New Zealand's housing challenges.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Can he confirm CoreLogic Australia's data shows that Sydney was the Australian city with the fastest house growth in the last year at 16.7%, yet Auckland house prices in the same period went up 22.6%, meaning that Auckland house prices were going up 35% faster than Sydney's?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, no, I can't confirm that because I regularly find that member's numbers as dodgy as his Chinese-sounding name surveys.
Order. That answer will not help the order of this House. Supplementary question, David Seymour.
Does the Minister think it's sensible to expect that bringing the same inflow of capital to the same supply-constrained market through a narrower channel being only new builds would have any effect on the price in the long term?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
No, don't think it would, and I would draw the member's attention to the experience in Christchurch that did have very high house price inflation, went over 15%. We've been able to treble the rate of new house build in Christchurch. Over the last year, house prices in Christchurch have only risen by 2%. Rents have actually dropped by 8% in Christchurch. What that shows is that supply is the most important focus, and that is why this government in Auckland is putting the emphasis on growing supply as quickly as possible.
A supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Can he confirm that house prices in New Zealand's main urban centres went up 40% faster than Australia's main urban centres in the last year, that the median price in Auckland is now only $68,000 less than Sydney's median, even though New Zealand incomes are much lower?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, no, I cannot confirm those numbers. As I said earlier, I find that member's numbers as dodgy as his Chinese-sounding name surveys that are not particularly reliable. I'd also note that since we have been government, an increasing number of New Zealanders are choosing to move from Australia to New Zealand because our incomes are doing better, and that New Zealanders see a better prospect for their future in New Zealand under a John Key government than they ever did when the previous side ran the place.
Oh, point of order, the Right Honourable Winston
Mr. Speaker, the Minister in answer said he couldn't confirm the figures, and all the rest was a political tirade, and he should have been stopped.
Order. No. I did consider indeed intervening, but the level of interjection that was coming from my immediate left I thought was enough for the Minister to have the opportunity to respond to that. Supplementary question, Joanne Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In what ways are New Zealand first home buyers at an advantage to those in Australia, and what steps has the government taken to further help this group?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, New Zealand first home buyers are able to access their KiwiSaver funds for putting a deposit on a house. Our Home Start package that took effect on the 1st of April expands the funds that can be withdrawn and increases those grants.
Order.
And subsequently, Mr. Speaker, there has been a record uptake of those schemes. I note that Australia does not allow access to superannuation funds for first home buyers, and I think that puts New Zealand young families at a significant advantage in meeting their aspirations of owning their own home.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Did he deliberately mislead the House by claiming that Auckland house prices have not gone up as fast as those in Sydney, or New Zealand house prices haven't gone up as fast as those in Australia, or did he simply not check his facts?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, let me give the member the exact figures. The average price of a home in Sydney, latest data, is $930,000. The average price of a house in Auckland is $741,000, i.e. houses in Sydney are more expensive than Auckland. If we look at the latest data on increases, the latest quarterly data shows that house prices in...
Order. There's little point in answering the question to the member when the member's not prepared to listen to the answer. Question number 7, Alfred Nart. Order. The member, Phil Twyford, will stand and withdraw and apologise for that interjection.
Withdraw and apologise.
Question number 7, Alfred Nardo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister.